And we should be live.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Radnor Township Curriculum Committee meeting on September 22nd, 2020. And I haven't pulled up my agenda yet. So is the first item on the agenda the administrative remarks?
Yes.
Let's go with the administrative remarks.
All right, thank you. Before we begin, I'd like to just welcome our new student rep, Sebastian Caper, with us, and also thank Andrew McMenamin, our teacher rep, for continuing to serve on this committee. So we're very excited to have you both with us. So before we get started with the meat of the agenda, tonight I'd like to take some time to walk through some of the online supports that are available to parents and students. As you're aware, RTSD has been working diligently to have a strong start to the school year, and to ensure that information is readily available, a significant amount of time and effort has gone into providing information via our website. So I'm going to screen share here. Chris, can you enable screen sharing, please?
Yep, you're good.
All right. All right, hopefully everybody can see that. So we are on the district webpage, and one of the ways that parents and students can keep apprised of everything that's going on is right in the middle under the latest. There is a opportunity to click where it's a mobile friendly access to all things for the 2020-2021 school year. And it kicks off on the home page, and this is where you'll have a lot of the current information. So as you can see, we've got a special board meeting tonight. And there is a message from Superintendent Batchelor that went out on September 18th. So any new information will be posted here on this website. As parents and students navigate through here, there's information about our learning phases. So phase 1, 2, and 3 for both the elementary, middle, and high school, or the elementary and secondary programs. We also have COVID information in here. So our health and safety plan, our athletics health and safety plan, guiding principles, all of that can be found here. And again, this is both for PC and for mobile access. We have information related to our COVID-19 data dashboard on here. So it gives the updated information as to the percent positivity and where we are as a district. So if you're looking for that kind of information, the district is providing that. We also have informational videos that are available that the communication department has been working on. So these are some of the things that we've been highlighting about wearing masks and things like that and riding the bus. We do have a variety of information related to schedules for both the elementary and the secondary, and it lays out what parents and students can expect during the course of a school day. And so that if you're wondering what your student's day is going to look like, that is available here, and it breaks it down by grade. And then one of the pieces that has been our heavy target of this and has been one of our most clicked things on this is technology support. And so we've got a lot of information about technology in here, and we've got a tech support tab. And so we have a number available for parents and students between 8 and 3 p.m. that we have manned where they can call and get assistance. We also have support tickets that outside of those hours, parents and students can submit forms to either have remote tech support or to have scheduled time for on-site tech support. We do have information regarding Hack and Schoology. We've got opportunities if parents need assistance with home internet and how we're supporting that. So the Radnor Educational Foundation is helping to support families experiencing severe economic hardship so they can have internet at their home. The district is social workers work through that as well with Comcast Internet Essentials. We have loaner hotspots available to families. So there is a wealth of information and supports that's available here on the website. And a lot of work has gone into this by Mr. Petiti, Mr. Dukevich, Dr. Hand, and a variety of different people here at the district. And so I just wanted to highlight, if a parent or student is looking for supports, there are plenty of supports available online, and we do have people waiting to help you out. So that is my remarks. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Bechtold. I think that it was really important to go over that because we have received some communications that people didn't know where to get assistance for the virtual schooling. So that was great to sort of just remind people that where to find the help they need. And sometimes it's hard when, you're trying to help your student. And so it's just good to refresh everyone's memory that those things are available to them. There's lots of support for that. All right, that brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is public comment. Is there any public comment? Mr. Petiti, you're muted.
Yes. Hi.
Is there any public comment?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I wasn't aware we were at that point. Yes, we have one from Roberta Winters, 326 Williams Road, Rosemont. Speaking as an individual regarding the K-5 monitoring plan and assessment that are on this afternoon's agenda, I am pleased that informal assessment will be done in the fall as teachers, parents, and students are in transition as they become more familiar with evolving instructional programs. I would also hope that during this period, professional staff will not be overwhelmed by the need to obtain and submit data on individual progress during this adjustment phase. These are unsettled times when consideration of many factors is needed. Thank you. That is all.
Thank you very much. All right, that brings us, we're moving right along to our agenda. We need to first approve the minutes from the June 16th, 2020 Curriculum Committee meeting. That was a long time ago. Most of the meetings, and there have been several over the summer, have been regarding reopening. So they've been meetings of the entire board. Committee, anybody have any issue with the minutes as written? I see Sarah shaking her head. Amy, Andrew, anything, any comments? Okay. The minutes stand as written. And then let's move into our agenda items. So board action items, the 2020-2021 assessment plan. I'm not sure if Mr. Dukevich or Mr. Bechtold is going to run with this.
So actually, Mr. Dukevich is going to run with this, but we do have a board action item to move forward an agreement for CritiCare. This is something, Mrs. Solomon, that got added recently. So I would just like to point that out. So it's a nursing services agreement for RNs and LPNs. And this is something that we've had a partnership with them in the past. And so that's a action item that was recently added to this agenda.
All right. You know what? I don't have that. Do the other curriculum committee members have that?
Yeah, that was in my packet on Friday.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I'm virtual trying to be
I know, you're
environmentally
being more,
friendly,
you're
and
being
I
more-
don't have it.
Can I ask Dan, the only question I had is this, would this typically have gone to finance, but it just because of the timing came to curriculum?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
We have had for a number of years a partnership with CritiCare, and they do provide us sub nurses, and so this is something the district has partnered with them last year and the year before. So my guess is I don't recall them being in curriculum previously, so it probably would have gone through finance.
Yeah, it was the timing. It came in after, unfortunately, the finance meeting, and we wanted to do it now, so that's how it got moved to curriculum. So
Got it. It looked fine to me. I just wanted to make sure I understood the thinking.
Okay, so
and-
I found it. So you stuck it in under action items. Got it. Okay, but it's not listed as a separate one. I'm not going to be able to read this now. It's several pages. So Sarah, I guess you've seen it. Anybody else?
I have a
That's-
question. May I just ask a question about it?
Of course, I haven't been able to look at it.
Thank you. Mr. Bechtold, I understand that this is a contract that we've had in the past. What is the status with nursing? Are we experiencing shortages or we need extras given the COVID situation? Could you just give us a little context for how nursing is? It's such a crucial role, I assume, this year.
It is. So we have historically had a relationship with Criticare, and they do provide sub nursing for us. We've used them in the past when we've had instances where we've had field trips and we needed to send a nurse on a field trip with a student. So we have had a positive relationship with them. We anticipate that as we move through this year, especially with our nurses being in direct contact with students that are coming down that are ill in a pandemic, that we may have an increased need for substitute nurses. So we're just looking to have the board approve this, so we would have that those necessary resources for our students should we need additional hands on deck, and they're one phone call away, or if we have a nurse that gets sick and we need to have somebody step in.
Terrific. Thank you so.
I have a question about this. Have we put any other nursing support in the actual buildings at this point, or is it still just the school nurse assigned to that building?
Mr. Dukevich, I don't know if you've got anything on this. I can't speak to that. It's a great question, Mrs. Solomon.
Yeah, I can jump in real quick. Our plan, working with Todd Stitz of Overseas Nurses and Maureen Loraria, the nurse coordinator for the district, was when we bring students back to add a nurse at each building to support the beginning stages of our phase. And so that's been in place, and we're, as we look to potentially make that move, we are prepared to have additional nursing in each building to support any needs we have. And
so they would go through this contract then, presumably?
Some of which are through a different contract. I think that's pre-approved, like Bayada is one example. And others may just be internal folks that share buildings. And Todd and Maureen are really overseeing how the buildings are adequately supported.
And does anyone know if we have any students that have a one-on-one nurse assigned to them in the buildings at this point that will be returning?
I can't for certain tell you. I think there may be one at Wayne where our life skills program is housed, but I'd have to confirm that to be true.
Yeah. But so would that person also come through this, or is that through a different agency as well?
I'd have to check to be sure. In my experience, when I've had nurses work with individual students, it's usually been through a private insurance provider, and that they're through a family, and that usually is through a service. But I'd have to check for Wayne. I'm pretty sure that's the same case, though. So
really, this contract is just an extra insurance policy that we can get the staffing we need, it sounds like.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, anybody else with the nursing? All right, and I guess that then moves us on to the 2020-2021 assessment plan.
All right. Thank you, Lydia. And I'm going to also welcome Dr. Kearney here today. So we're going to co-present this piece. It's a brief overview. There is an ancillary document that kind of goes into greater depth, but I'm going to bring this slideshow up, and I think Jim is with us now. And really the idea here is, considering the remote situation that we're all in, we want to make sure that we are adequately assessing our students, finding out where they are now. Obviously, the spring, we did not have the luxury of having them with us in person. So, we've gone through different measures to assess any content that was missed then, and ways to, supplement and review that for the beginning of the year to prepare our students. But also long-term throughout the year, the question is, how are we going to adequately assess our students with fidelity and integrity? And Jim has really worked hard to put together a nice plan. So this presentation includes that, an element of that, which is a Literably program. It's a pilot program we're going to try this year for ELA assessments in K-5. And then finally, we'll wrap up with a discussion of the progress report in K-5 and a proposal regarding that one. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim now to talk through this presentation.
All right, thank you, Sean. As Sean had said, one of the challenges that we're facing this year and at the end of last year is how do we adapt our assessments to remote learning, particularly those that have traditionally been given as secure assessments. So the supplemental document that is also part of the board presentation is the guidelines for remote assessment that we put together in order to give some guidance, particularly to teachers on assessment and identify best practices. Next slide, please, Sean. So whether it's in person or online, the purpose of assessment doesn't really change. It's really to determine students' progress towards the learning goals and help teachers and also students themselves make decisions about what they should do next to continue that progress. One of the aspects of assessment that we started talking about as a district last June during an in-service day was pre-assessing students. And this became particularly important because with the closure last spring, it's certainly possible that students may have some gaps between what it was that they would have traditionally learned or at least been exposed to in a school year and what it was that they were exposed at the end of last year. So teachers in June met by grade level or by course at the secondary level and had some conversations about skills and concepts that may not have been taught the same way at the end of last year that they were taught this year, and any gaps that might have been caused by that, as well as started to have conversation about what they might do to pre-assess students come the fall in order to determine what it is that they are ready to learn. And the emphasis is giving some thought to what is it that students need to know in order to continue to learn in their current grade level and current course. There's the risk that if we try to backfill too much information, students fall further behind because they're working towards below grade level standards or below grade level learning goals. So the pre-assessment should help teachers make some decisions about what's most important for students to be taught, or what is it that they're walking into a class already knowing in order to inform their instruction going forward. We'd also talked a bit about the importance of formative assessments, which are always an important part of teaching to help check students' understanding as they're going through the learning process, as instruction's taking place, in order for teachers to make decisions about what it is that they need to do next. But in a remote learning environment, some of the techniques that teachers would typically use, including just walking around the classroom and monitoring students' progress on whatever it is that they're assigned to work on, aren't as readily available to teachers. So in that document, we also identified some tools that teachers could use remotely and using some digital tools to continue to conduct those formative assessments. Some of your own students might have been exposed and experiencing some of this right now. Edpuzzle is a program that lets teachers embed questions into videos so that students would answer those questions before they could continue in those videos, or even for teachers to pause a video intentionally and offer some comments, written comments to students as they're working through that video. Digital polls are available to our teachers and our students for them to gauge what it is that students might know about a topic, either shortly after they've instructed on it or prior to instruction. And even some of the techniques that teachers would use in their classroom or techniques that they're going to be using remotely too. So just as simple as thumbs up or thumbs down for students to give a sense of how they're following along with the teacher's instruction. Because of the nature of remote assessment and the assessments in general, we also want to continue to emphasize making sure that students are being assessed on higher levels thinking skills, in part because these are more directly aligned with the goals of our courses, but also because they're less likely to be Googled or copied through during remote instruction. So we've been using performance assessments and more authentic assessments of higher level thinking, for years. These are nothing new, but in some ways, the closures have asked us to give some more consideration to these and think about what is the nature of the assessments that we're giving, and where might there be some more opportunities to ask students to apply what they're learning, to personalize a little bit more, to make it, as I said before, a little bit more difficult to Google or just copy straight out. But at the same time, the assessments that we've given traditionally, we've given for a reason, and we've thought they've had value. So to the extent possible, we are continuing to administer our remote standardized assessments. For example, today our literacy team was doing the DIBELS screening with K-1 students who are in cyber school. This is the first time that they've done this, and they're gauging to see how it goes and what adjustments they might need to make for students who are at home or learning remotely. It is possible for us to administer the MAP test remotely. So we're looking at what it is that we can continue to do and to gather the data that we would gather in a typical year, even if we have to make some adjustments because of the remote instruction. And where those adjustments might be the most profound are with our secure assessments, the assessments that traditionally aren't given to students beforehand to work on. It's ones that they're given in the moment to react to, like a math test, for example. So Sean, if you don't mind going on to the next slide. This is a particular challenge because we really can't guarantee the security of remote assessments in an online environment. The best we can do is reduce the likelihood that cheating takes place and that we maintain the validity of those assessments. So some of the techniques that our teachers are using is as they've always done, clearly state the expectations for the assessment and make sure students know what it is that they're allowed to use or not use during the assessment. Promoting academic integrity very directly with students about what it is that they should do, what it means to take responsibility for their own work. So completing the assignments as directed, presenting their own work, make sure they're giving credit to all sources. So this is not new to us, but it takes on a new meaning, and it takes on some, may put a little bit more ownership on students as well, particularly in a remote environment. There are some technological solutions that teachers can employ to try and decrease the likelihood of cheating. So Schoology allows for us to randomize the order that questions appear to students, randomize the answers within those questions, pull from a bank of questions so students might get different questions. If teachers choose, they could set time limits for how long students have for a question or a test. And we also have a lockdown browser that limits students' ability to copy their screen, to go onto other websites, to access videos or other resources. So these are tools that our teachers might be able to use to help promote the integrity and maintain the validity of our secure assessments. It's also particularly important to work with the parents on this. They're partners in their child's education and partners in helping our teachers administer assessments with integrity as well. So there's a few guidelines there, some tips for our parents to consider as well. One is helping the students plan their time and reducing the distractions so students don't feel pressure to engage in any activities that wouldn't be promoted, and they can do their best on the assessments and assignments for that matter that they're assigned remotely. Parents emphasizing and demonstrating the importance of academic integrity and talking with their students about what that means and helping to reinforce what it is that their teachers are also expecting from them, encouraging the students to seek help from their teachers where that's appropriate, and also reaching out directly to the teacher if they're aware that their child's having any difficulties. Once again, the purpose of these assessments are really to monitor students' progress towards the learning goals and help the teachers and students make decisions about what do they need to do next in order to continue to learn. A lot of times the assessments take on other importance for students, but at the end of the day, that's what their primary purpose is and should be. Now, one of the assessments that we give in a normal year is the Fondness and Pinnell benchmark assessment. This is how we monitor students' reading levels in grades K through 5. And it's not possible to administer this remotely. So Sean's going to talk to you a little bit about a possible solution for helping to continue to progress monitor students' reading level.
Thank you, Jim. So I came across through another curriculum director in a different district, actually, in a different state, who shared some very strong recommendations for a program called Literably. Literably is a relatively young company. They're from the West, out in California. And this individual shared some great promise with this program in actuality in their classrooms, in their district, and help support a really effective and efficient means of benchmarking student progress in ELA. Very similar to Fondness and Pinnell, but not directly correlated with Fondness and Pinnell quite yet. So Jim and I did some research. We contacted the company. We had several meetings with them, which included our literacy coaches, some of our principals, and we went through different iterations of how this would work, the benefits of it. And essentially, in this year, when, as Jim mentioned, we cannot, with fidelity and integrity, implement the F&P testing process for remote students, this would allow us to do this remotely give us a consistent benchmark 3 times over the year. We'd be able to do this with very little personnel efforts from us, and to do it effectively and objectively. The interesting thing about Literably is, just to give you a quick overview, students would read a passage aloud. They would be recorded by the computer. Their fluency passage would be uploaded to Literably, and then using analytics, 10% we're told would be computerized. The other 90% are done through human analytics. They would analyze the students' fluency of that passage, different elements of it, very similar to F&P, and then they would populate a report, a data report, kind of an analytic overview of that student at that time. And then those reports would be published to the teachers of those individual students. And then they, again, allow us to benchmark students' progress toward toward their fluency and toward their pronunciation and everything else with phonics and early literacy skills, and then follow those over the course of the year. So in this case, we're looking to do a 1-year pilot. We would administer it literally 3 times with students. And then along the way, we want to compare results with a sample of F&P reading levels. So whether we do that with a small cohort in 1 building or a small cohort in all 3 buildings, the idea this year will be to use that control group to measure and align and see how closely it is with the Literably results. So the idea behind this is to provide us with a consistent benchmark for progress of students' literacy acquisition, and to use the same tool regardless if we're remote or in person. And again, this came out from a very good source recommendation, and in doing our homework, Jim and I felt that this would be a great tool for this year, and well supported by our literacy coaches as well. Jim, anything to add about this?
No, the reading specialists were also part of the group that listened to the presentations and reviewed the product, and are also also enthusiastic about the possibility of using it this year.
Thank you, Jim.
Sorry, Mr. Djokovic, are you finished?
I am open for questions, please.
Ms. Goldman has her hand up.
Hi there. So just a few, thank you for the presentation. I have a few questions, and forgive me, but some of the more global aspects of this presentation, I want to just clarify. When you're talking about remote assessment, are you talking this presentation geared to K through 12? Is this an overarching approach separate from the program you just showed us, which was similar to Fontes and Pinnell for K through 5? Are you talking that this type of remote assessment is in place for all students?
So the guidelines for remote assessment are K through 12. They are guidelines, and they are a broad approach there. Clearly, what it would look like in specific grade levels and specific classrooms would be different across grade levels. But yes, that document is K through 12.
And is it, when you do these assessments, how does that work when kids are either hybrid or remote? I mean, how do you deliver an assessment when you have students in 2 different platforms?
So I think it depends on the nature of the assessment. If it's a secure assessment, an assessment that's given at the end of a unit, the teachers are preferring to do it when the students are in person. So it's possible that that they may distribute at the secondary level over 2 different days. When it comes to something like an assessment that's being given to students who are fully remote and in person, then students would likely both take it through Schoology, or it's possible that the students who are in class would take it on paper and pencil, but they'd be doing it at the same time. So for example, our K-5 math tests are being built out in Schoology. Students there would take it, if they're fully remote, they would be taking it through Schoology. And then those students in person would take it through Schoology or with paper and pencil.
Okay, and in the
Can I
past,
interrupt 2 seconds, Ms. Goldman? I think it's probably distracting for people who may be watching because we're still on the screen share.
yeah,
Perhaps we could,
it's,
there's another portion of the presentation. I just think people might,
thank you.
sorry.
Thank you. I was wondering
I want
why.
to see your lovely face.
Yeah. I was looking for whoever was talking. In the past, we've had a timeline for assessments. There's actually a place on the website under the Teaching and Learning Department where a calendar has been put out so that people have some sense of when different types of assessments are going to be coming up. And I checked the calendar. I don't see anything populated on there at this point. Are you planning on doing something like that, or you don't think that that's necessary?
Sean and Dan?
I'll jump in. We certainly, this has been an unprecedented summer. We certainly, feel that that is valuable, and we'll be getting something like that together, Mrs. Goldman.
Okay, and believe me, I know it's been an unprecedented summer. I'm not trying to say you've dropped the ball on anything, but I'm just curious, in order to keep track, this is such an unconventional school year, and I'm wondering if that you feel that that's a helpful thing for students and parents to have in order to be able to track when assessments are coming up.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the things that I know the department has put out in previous years, and so that's something we certainly, we'll work on. One of the things that we've actually been having is the target's been moving a little bit on some of the upcoming assessments, like the keystones and things like that. And so we've even been receiving information as recently as like the last 2 weeks about updated dates for that, and they've been kicking the can on that. So we certainly will put something together that has the most recent information, and we will have that out shortly.
And are you going to be using things like MAPS again and some of the other standardized tests that have been used in the past?
We are planning to use MAPS. We're also planning to continue with CDTs, and so yes, we are doing that. A communication, I believe it was sent out to parents about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago regarding SAT testing at the high school. We had there was a lot of back and forth with the College Board about that. And so we did send out information regarding targeted information to parents and students as it's been coming out. But I do think a one-stop shop that has the data assessment calendar would be helpful.
Okay. Just 2 more questions, I think. One is also on the secure remote assessment page. I assume that that's the expectations that you want for academic integrity go K through 12, or because the policy that's cited there, 106, really speaks just to the high school. It's a little bit of a policy issue. You're welcome to kick it our way if you want, but I know that it's from 2007. So I was just wondering, is that standard something you want applied across a broader cohort of students than just high school?
So the academic integrity statement, right. So that's an example of one. It doesn't have to look that way for each classroom or certainly each grade level, but the emphasis on academic integrity should be applied K through 12 as appropriate for the students and their level. That statement there is an example. It's not a specific statement that we're expecting every teacher to use verbatim.
Okay, thank you. My last question is for literally, which is a mouthful. I'm surprised I said it right on the first try. I think I said it right on the first try, is technical compatibility. For whatever reason, I'm having a flashback maybe to Amplify Science, and that seemed to be a great program. And then we had some technical glitches with it. So I'm just wondering if there's been a test run for literally, or one's planned to make sure that there isn't the same unanticipated technical glitch with that program.
So Amy, we have a meeting with the kind of the tech department there coming up soon, and we're adding that through Clever, which is our 1-point student access. So there's not a login issue, and to my knowledge, it's completely web-based. So there's not like a downloaded program that needs to be on the computer. I know Dr. Hand is on here, but we haven't really gotten involved on that side yet. This was kind of our first step is giving you feedback, the public feedback about this. And we're also going to bed out some content for parents on what this would look like and what the purpose is, and add that to the website as a page as well. We can certainly look into that more, but to my knowledge, I think it's an online program. It's just like any other kind of web-based program that we already use.
Okay, and I couldn't speak with any accuracy to the actual glitches that happened with Amplify Science, but I just would hope that if it literally has any coinciding characteristics, we would make sure that it works on our, with our technology seamlessly before we invest in it.
No, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
All right. Anyone else on the committee? Andrew, Sarah, anything more with this? So when I first heard about this, my first thought was that we have everybody up and running on, I always say this wrong, Fontes and Pinnell. But our backs are kind of against the wall, as I understand it, because this is so much easier to administer right now. And if this is, as good of an assessment, it'll be something we can use moving forward. And I was also concerned because it has the same lettering scale, or it has a lettering scale, but that doesn't necessarily correlate to the FMP. And so I thought that might also be a little bit confusing, but I think we have to really do this at this point, right? That's what my understanding was. This is the right assessment for us right now with this COVID environment. So we will move forward. I'm glad you found it. All right.
We have high hopes for this, yeah.
All right. Are we ready to move on to the pilot program for K-5 progress monitoring?
Yes. All right, so this is the final piece of our presentation, and this proposal is really meant to not only inform parents of how our trimesters are currently broken down, which is they're not really true trimesters and haven't been, that they're not divided into 3 equal parts. So for example, this year with the late start after Labor Day, we have just 42 student days before the end of the first trimester. And so the proposal that bringing to the curriculum committee tonight is to start the year off and with the significant smaller number of student days as compared to the second trimester, which is 60 student days, and the third trimester, which is 68 student days. And with all the uncertainties of how we've begun, that we have just 2 formal progress reports for this year ahead. The one would happen in February and the final would happen in June. And we would still, of course, maintain our parent-teacher conferences in November. We would just not have a formal summative report at that time. And just to give an overview, our elementary progress report are standards-based. They're not letter grade or percentage-based. And they really are meant to give a snapshot in time toward the mastery and acquisition of progress towards standards, PA Common Core standards. So we can do that without a formal report. And with just 42 days into the school year, it's very difficult for a teacher right now to get enough summative data to say with any real validity where that student is with great progress. So the idea is to continue with our parent-teacher conferences, really embrace the idea of student progress where they are at that time, using all the different pieces that Jim mentioned with regard to remote assessment, feedback, formative evaluation, and then continue with our typical plan, which is a teacher conference in March with a formal progress report and then a formal progress report in June. And that's the proposal I'd like to bring to you for this year. Sarah?
Yeah, Mr. Kevich, I guess the question I had looking at this, I absolutely understand the reasoning for the approach. I think it makes sense. I guess if I were a parent of a K-5 student, what I would want to know is, what does an informal progress report look like? Does this mean I'm getting anything in writing before the meeting? Am I just getting a parent-teacher conference? Is the written material just less structured than this formal report? What's an informal progress report?
So informally, it could take any number of routes. We could develop a tool which makes it more formal. Or we could look at, working with grade levels and deciding on what was covered in that 42 days and what would be appropriate. Maybe it's narrative and anecdotal to share with parents about their child's progress. We spent a lot of work over the last couple of years on our progress report. I've joined about a year ago, and when it came on, there were still a lot of final revisions made. And when I met with the PTO Study Council and asked them questions about their progress report, it was funny. I was surprised to see that they really couldn't care very much less about the actual indicators of progress and more so what the teacher had to say about their child. How were they doing? What was their affect? Were they making friends? How kind were they? Were they making progress towards their goals? Of course, but because we don't have a letter grade or percentage-based report card, it is more narrative. It is more overarching about that child's progress at a moment in time. And just with 42 days, and obviously all the circumstances that are in front of us, it didn't make sense to me that we would give a formal report then. And, in speaking with other directors in local districts, many of which are looking to do something similar to alleviate that piece and really work on bringing the children back in, meeting their needs, finding out where those gaps exist in content and understanding, and build on those without a formal report to evaluate them after such a short period. And this does speak to a larger thing that needs to be fixed, I think, in the future, and that is to reshuffle how our days are situated. Right now, the way trimesters were built was to align with the conference time because it conveniently falls near Thanksgiving. But if you look at a schedule over 180 student days, that's not well distributed. So in many districts where they've gone to trimesters, they've positioned the progress report to happen in like the first 2 weeks of December, while still maintaining a conference in November. So there's no formal report then, but it comes out 2 weeks later. That's what many districts have done when they've gone to trimesters and have gone to like a 60-60-60 distribution of student days, which to me makes the most sense. That's a longer term thing, but for this year, just considering all the circumstances, this is the recommendation I'd like to make.
Okay. No, and I absolutely understand that makes sense. I get, and typically a parent-teacher conference K-5 includes, the teachers pull together an entire portfolio of the student at that conference, right? There's the F&P report, there's, their grade report, but there are also other, samples of writing and things like that go all into that. Is that something it seems like that's a lot for teachers to pull together when they may not have all of that necessarily, or it's all going to be electronic. So we're going to be asking them to, I guess I'm trying to visualize how this conference works when you aren't sitting face to face with a teacher in a classroom necessarily. I don't know what the plan is, but to be asking teachers to translate all the electronics either through Schoology. I think a lot of that is left to be decided. And it's clear you haven't necessarily had a chance to pin that down, but I would hope that you think about all that. I think you're right. What was always most meaningful to me was what the teacher said and less necessarily the paperwork they presented. So maybe though giving them some kind of framework so that they're not just kind of left in the dark about what they're supposed to put together.
No, absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, that was actually my question. I'm assuming our conferences are going to be virtual across the board, K-12.
So Lydia, we have not put out anything formal yet. I would expect the same right now because again, our health and safety plan prohibits visitors in the building and it's limited to just picking students up. So I would expect also there would be Zoom conferences.
Right.
Unless something drastic changes between now and November. But I think we can still do that effectively. And we do need to provide our teachers with a framework and some ideas on how to foster and facilitate a conference virtually without a formal report.
Right.
And I think that would be our next step.
Yeah. So it's going to look like a different conference because you're not going to have documents and you're going to be virtual. But I think it can be just as meaningful and sometimes even more personal when you're, looking directly at each other. But yeah, definitely different than it has been in the past. But yeah, I support this because I think it makes sense when you look at the school calendar. This does really kind of fit in better with what we're actually doing. Andrew, Amy, anything with regard to?
No, I like most of these issues in the planning meeting. I had most of my questions asked, all of them. I just wanted to mention something very quickly, which is that we've already had a couple conversations with our kids' teachers, and it's been great. It's been personal, it's been responsive, very positive.
Well, I think too. Oh, go ahead, Amy.
I'm sorry if I missed this, Mr. Dukevich, but is the time allotted for the parent-teacher conferences at the Thanksgiving the same? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, it is.
Because All right, I was just thinking that's a lot of Zoom Zoom time for a teacher. So I was just wondering, how many, I didn't do the math, but thinking about how many conferences they might have to squish in on a screen in that period of time. Just seems like a lot.
Yeah, they may have to be a little shorter. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, that does seem like a pretty heavy lift. I am also curious, can you confirm this, Mr. Dukovich? Are we still roughly 30% of our elementary has elected to stay virtual?
That's correct.
Okay. So, yeah. Just different times here. Okay.
Lydia,
Yes.
do you want to see if our teacher rep or student rep might have any questions before we move on? I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but just before we move on.
I was thinking of putting Mrs. McMiniman on the spot with the literacy testing, but yeah, Mrs. McMiniman, do you have comments about the conferences or the literacy testing that you want to bring up?
It's really the first time I'm hearing about the literacy piece, so I like to look at it just a little bit more before I would really give too much. And as far as the conferences, I think that if they go virtual, you probably wouldn't need as much time as you would have on an in-person conference schedule. But also, I agree with Mrs. Goldman, or I'm sorry, whoever said it. It's a lot of screen time, back to back to back. If it's run the same way it's been in person.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a little bit intense. Sebastian, any thoughts on conferences? You probably
I
haven't.
think, yeah. So I think what a teacher is looking to do during like a student conference, kind of get to know, well, before you can even have a conference, there has to be like a relationship established between the student and the teacher. I think that across all grades, K through 12, at least in my experience, the teachers have been very welcoming and opening, and they really do try to establish a personal connection with each and every student. And I think that it's not super important to have a formal report as long as that teacher can say or make their observations to their parent about how they think their student is doing. And in the end, I think that that's what's most important and what people value more.
Yeah, now this is just K through 5 though, this particular change, correct?
That's right, Lydia. At the elementary, we're trimesters, but the middle school and high school are more distributed as quarter semesters.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts on the conferences, anyone? All right. Moving on, the student handbooks. Does anyone want to?
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
Thank you. So what I'll do is I'll go through and share some of the updates for the student handbooks. We do have all of these posted. So let me jump into, let me pull up one right now. All right, so we've got the high school handbook here. And one of the things I'm going to jump down to that is standard across all three handbooks is all three handbooks have a COVID statement that was put in here that also has a link to the district's health and safety plan as we look to reintroduce students to schools under phase 2 or phase 1 at some point this year. We thought it was important to include the health and safety plan in the student handbook, and so that is in all three handbooks. We also went through and put together expectations for virtual learning. And this is something that in part was a part of our continuity of education plan that we had presented to the board in the spring and was posted on our website. Also, this is research best practices and information that we gathered from working with our solicitor. There's a couple different subcategories in here. For example, district settings and teacher practice, things such as like screen sharing disabled as a preset. So what can parents and students anticipate when they go and come into one of our virtual learning sessions? Expectations for students. So students must be in attendance for homeroom in all classes. And that's something that's gone really, really well this year. I was speaking to a number of teachers this week, Mr. Rosen, most recently, and the teachers are seeing that students are doing a great job of attending. And so it's a significant shift with the expectations being laid out there. We've got the virtual learning with the live streaming going on. And students have been in attendance this year, and that's a requirement. Having their camera on to participate in live sessions. So it allows us to ensure that students are engaged in the content, muting their microphone when they're not speaking. So all of these expectations for how to conduct themselves in a Zoom meeting are in all of the student handbooks. Prohibitions, and this is something that also we had in the in our expectations in the spring, but it was not part of the student handbook at that time. It was part of our continuity of education plan, was prohibitions on recording classes by parents or students, or sharing videos or pictures of classes on social media platforms, sharing Zoom links. So a lot of these safety and security measures to ensure people's privacy. Students and parents are encouraged to. So this is just some of our best practices that we've talked about in the spring, and we've encouraged students as teachers began classes, encouraged students and families to do things like notifying members of your household before you jump on a Zoom session so they're aware that you are live streaming. Using headphones with a mic can help to eliminate background noise and protect other people in your home's privacy. Setting up a workstation where you've got the students situated with a blank wall behind them, or using a Zoom background so that way people aren't seeing in your homes. So these things are included in there. We also included the link to the technical assistance. So this is what I showed at the outset, and that is specifically to the technology access and support resources. So that way, if we have families that need to get someone to assist them with technical support while they're learning from home, they've got that readily available. So families that are experiencing extreme financial hardship due to current economic conditions, we wanted to put something in here that gave parents and students a point person that they could reach out to. We're very fortunate to have two social workers, Kira Evans and Christine Culp, do a phenomenal job, and they help with a variety of things, including low-cost internet, access to free meals, clothing, school supplies, and assistance with utilities on a one-time basis. And so that's also included in all the handbooks. And then for the schools that have netiquette, this is the high school's netiquette that was put out last year to students. It kind of does the expectations for what students are expected to do for etiquette on the net. All of the handbooks were reviewed by the solicitor, and policy updates are throughout there. One of the things that we recently posted was, let me pull this up here, and this is hot off the presses, and this is available on Board Docs right now. So this goes page by page with the handbook changes, and so you can see exactly what was changed from the previous year. And so this is available on Board Docs. And this is one of the things that I'll say about these point by point changes. There are some minor non-substantive changes that are in here that either just have links to updated policies, or have dates that are new for the year, or have like a new teacher's name in the high school or middle school yearbook, or student government members. Those are not listed here, but the substantive changes are listed on this sheet, which is available on Board Docs. All right.
All right, Ms. Goldman.
Thank you. I know that's a lot of work to update those handbooks. So thank you for everybody who did the work to do that and sharing it with us in a really concise way. Is there still a procedure where students and or parents have to sign something saying they've read the handbook? That seemed to be in place at some point, and I don't know if that still is.
Yeah, so, and that was something that actually Mrs. Solomon and Mr. Babs and I spoke about recently. In previous years, we used to do that in hard copy. We transitioned to an online form last year where students and parents would sign off that they had read the handbook. This is something that is currently posted on, all 3 handbooks are posted on our website. We bring them to the curriculum committee meeting as a means of additionally letting parents and students know about them and giving another platform to speak about them. But yes, that is something that we transitioned to a mobile, I believe it's called Snap, where the parents would go and do their back to school forms on as well.
Did you tell Sebastian that one of his responsibilities as being a member of the committee is he has to read and sign first? Just kidding, Sebastian, but you
She's
can
putting
be
you on the
our
spot there.
ambassador.
Are you finished, Ms. Goldman?
Yep. Yep. Thank you for that. I appreciate the answering that question.
Okay. Ms. Dunn, Dr. Babson, anything about the handbooks? Has there been any feedback that, how do I put this, that people are actually reading these online?
So I'll speak, as a parent in a different school district. I think that many of my my friends that my wife and I are friends with know, people sign the forms, and then when something happens, they look at the handbook. Typically, is my firm belief for most parents. So all these handbooks are available. We encourage everyone to familiarize yourself with these. One of the things that I know that the building principals do is they go through these things with their students. One of the pieces, provided the board brings the students back to phase 2 at some point. One of the pieces of that transition is to go through these again with students, go through the health and safety plan, go through some of the expectations for virtual learning. And I know that the building principals have been working to highlight aspects of the student handbook for that in anticipation of phase 2.
You know what, I'm really pleased to hear that, because it's almost like the most, it's like a crib sheet for the for the handbook, if you will. This is the stuff that you really need to know that's in here. But
could I add one more thing? I just want to give a shout out to whoever did it. And I think Mr. Batchelor might laugh at this. I want to thank you for the change that you made in the Radnor Middle School handbook on page 11, where you renamed the guidance office now the school counseling office. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think Mr. Batchelor gets that that's something I appreciate the change on. And one other question. Are there still drills being held even in like the hybrid format this year? That's still a state requirement that we have to navigate around.
My child had a fire drill this week. Good job, schools.
are we're still required to have one a month? Is that still the rule?
That is correct. Yes,
Yeah.
we are still required to have them.
And it's actually a great question. That's part of why, as part of the plan that we're going to talk about later tonight, we need that in-service day Friday, because not only do we need to have fire drill planning for while our teachers are in the building, and it's just our teachers, but we need to have it. Once we start bringing students in hybrid, what does a fire drill look like in hybrid? How do we still keep 6-foot distance? Where are we going? The fact that we're AM, PM at the elementary, we're every other day at middle school and high school. It's just a great example of there's so many things that are different. We have to orient our students to how different our schools are now, from fire drills to arrivals to dismissals to the cafeteria to our specials. There's so much that is different, and we need time to go through that. And fire drills is one of them. And it's important.
And even now we won't be doing our shelter in place because we can't. We can't all huddle together in the corner because of COVID. So yeah, one more thing. All right. That brings us, I believe, to new business, unless there's anything with regard to the agenda. Any new, Mrs. McMiniman.
Yeah, I just wanted to point something out. We were actually looking at the handbook the other day, but when you go to the website, they're still listed under the 2019-20 link on the main pages, but it takes you to the new handbook. So I didn't know if we just wanted to update that, because it might throw somebody off if they're looking for 2021.
I'm actually going to make an executive order here and assign that to Mr. Hand. Sorry, I'm
Dr.
taking
Hand.
He might be able to give us a hand on this. Dr. Hand could help us out.
Give us a hand. Thank you for noticing that. Okay, anything else with regard to the agenda or any new business? Okay, seeing none. I assume our next meeting will be the third Tuesday of October, but to be determined. So with no further comments, this meeting is adjourned.